Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday, December 15th. Big FOMC day today. We'll go through some of the implications and price action and a lot of charts to go over in today's session. So I'll try to go through the video pretty quickly so that you could take a look at some of the charts that I'm going through and some of the themes that I thought played out for the day. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving any advice or recommendations. Please read the whole video here. Also, YouTube is just taking a longer time than normal to render these videos. So if you open up the video and it's blurry, you can't see it right, just maybe give it another half hour. YouTube is just taking a long time to render these videos. So I thought today was really kind of a tale of two markets. I was joking around, as I like to do on Twitter, a little bit, and I was just saying, for those Formula One fans, you probably know these memes, but this was kind of before the bulls, before the FOMC versus afterwards, right? I told you so. I told you this was going to happen. I told you it was priced into the market. That's kind of what the feel was, I think, for the day. Just really ugly price action again for a lot of the growth areas of the market leading up until the meeting. A lot more short ideas. We have a couple traders in the room who have just killing it with short ideas, because I don't trade that many short setups. I kind of pick and choose, but we saw just so many things just continue to break down in the beginning of the day. Roku was one name, Uber was one name that I played today, but I mean, there's just a lot of high momentum names that just continue to break down and did it on a fast pace. However, there were some positives too, like even before the Fed meeting, there were some names that were actually up a little bit, like a Cloudflare was up this today, right? So there was some positive things, like some of the semis were up, right? And if you look at the group for the day, the semis were up. They were amongst your leading areas of the market, up another 4%. So it's nice to see the leaders kind of do that, lead, right? In terms of FOMC and the Fed day today, they're normally kind of tricky days. And I think there was a nice comment too about sticking with what I was saying on Twitter. There were a lot of nice comments, and you kind of just feel like that Powell has kind of learned how to do these press conferences a little bit better, right? In terms of these meetings, right? 3 years ago, I thought Dan Rosenblum sent this out, and I agree with this. 3 years ago, I remember this day after the Fed meeting, and it was a disaster after the Fed meeting. The market dropped 9% in three and a half sessions. So it seems that he's gotten the kind of the hang of sorry, I was just reading a headline about Apple that's coming out, but he seems to have gotten the language, to kind of work through these meetings and make sure that he doesn't use any terms or words, because everybody picks up on little things from these press conferences. So I thought he threaded the needle, and I thought that in terms of what he mentioned was already priced into the market. This was something that I sent out this morning just to see where the expectations were. And I was joking around it because nobody knows what the Santa Claus rally is. But this was one of the first things that I sent out this morning, if I can find it. I sent out a lot of tweets today. But so this is a good thing in terms of market expectations. You always want to understand like what the market is thinking or what the market has priced in, right? The market doesn't like surprises, right? And I think it was kind of surprised a bit when Powell spoke in front of Congress. When was that? 2 weeks ago? And mentioned that, hey, we're dropping the term, transitory. That shocked the market a bit, right? Now that the market has had some time and has, gotten a little bit of a handle on some of the inflation reports out and has started to price in rate hikes, right? Now when he actually mentions it, so this is what we mentioned in yesterday's video, right? Let me go back to this, sorry. This is exactly what we mentioned in yesterday's video, right? It has now been priced into the market. So that is why And in trading, as I talked about just that in yesterday's video, it's often like what I refer to like on for earnings, right? It's often buy the rumor and sell the news. And in terms of names going down, so many names have gotten hit, so many names in areas of the market have gotten hit, right? So that's the, in this case, sell the rumor, and today seemed like it was buy the news. So let me go over some charts too, but these things also, everything that was mentioned seemed to be pretty widely expected, and I think perhaps the market was even pricing in a worst case scenario for today. So that helped the market all around. But I will say this, like, if you played some of these things to the short side, the last couple days, at least you could kind of stay somewhat, balanced with the market performance, where you didn't suffer too much, because there were a lot of good looking setups, and it helps to kind of have someone, and that's kind of what we bring to traders is to kind of get your mind around, hey, this might actually be a decent short setup. I mean, I haven't really traded many short setups in single names. I usually use puts basically to hedge in the indices. I don't really trade that many names, but there's been so many names that have just have broken down and just continue to go to the downside. So many of those names bounced back. Some of them, outperformed really well. Some of them almost got back to flat. But so it like I said, if it could really help if someone kind of goes over, hey, this looks like a better short attempt. But then, of course, on days like this, you just have to understand the risk to reward. And I just thought it was, hey, there's more of a chance that we bounce than anything else, especially after what we already got to from till about 2 o'clock. So let me just talk about the defensive areas of the market first, right? I thought this has been really interesting what's been going on in some of these names. Look at what healthcare did today, right? So this has kind of been one of the last defensive areas of the market that's been really strong. I mean, this group, when you look at like a Procter and Gamble, which I think gave back some, it wasn't up that much, but this is really overbought. It's a 77. So, a 77 RSI. So many of these defensive areas have really made ginormous moves. And if you've caught some of these things, congratulations to you. Rather than looking at the same stocks and waiting for them, sometimes it helps, and you don't have to buy into this whole group. But if you could catch a Hershey's or a Procter and Gamble or the XLV, I also played this through SPLV through the ETF, but this is the low volatility ETF. This thing didn't back down at all, and is making new highs. So look at the volume on this thing today, and I'm still long this ETF. There's no sell signal. I think that this group can continue to outperform, but is a bit overheated at this point. Notice that the RSI on this is a 69. It's not as hot as Procter and Gamble. So another name that I thought was interesting today was Clorox too. Out of this defensive group, I think it can take out 181. So let's get to, so that was kind of the first half of the day, and these areas still carried. Talking about the healthcare group first, something like an HZNP looks really good to me. And a TTG member brought this one to my attention. I traded it. It worked well. A couple others in this group too. You could look outside of straight up healthcare, but TMO had a nice day too. This is one of those names that you would logically think would do pretty well. We've talked about this name a bunch of times, as well as Abbott. They're testing, besides they're medical device companies, but they also are involved in a lot of the COVID testing. So I like having positions in some of these areas that don't move quite as fast. Abbott looks fine. Had a move down yesterday, but has been performing a little bit better than that TMO. But I think these groups are kind of interesting to have some exposure to, rather than having all your eggs in one basket, whether it's just straight up low volatility names, high beta names, growth names, value names. I think it helps to have, as long as there's a signal there, not just owning names just to own them, just to say that you have some of this, but as long as they look like they're strong and intact. I didn't get to the S&P chart. I wanted to cover that very briefly. I'll give you the level to watch. I thought coming into today, what I said in the pre-market session was that, hey, we're kind of like around like a coin flip area in terms of the S&P chart. We were hanging right at the bottom of value, and we actually broke a little bit below. And then once the Fed announcement started, we got back into value. But still, I don't think that you could just say, hey, we're out of the woods, because the S&P chart is not indicating that it's breaking out yet. 4709 will be something to watch for the rest of the week. And if we tag this and break back down, you know that we still are in a more challenged market in terms of, and we'll see it in breadth. Right? You can see the bottom left of your screen, market breadth for the most part. We'll go to the 5-minute chart here for just a second. But if you look at the bottom of your screen, look at how bad breadth was again this morning. So part of today's move could have been a bit of short covering, right? So we're going to need to see the longs come back into this market, right? It can't just be short covering. Short covering can provide some of these big moves like we saw today, right? That's mainly, I think, people both underpositioned as well as a combination of short covering that could really get things going. But now we're going to need the longs to kind of, specifically the institutions, to carry the ball from here. So that's a level to watch, right? So I'm always concerned about, levels for confirmation, right? I talked about that one on the 1-hour chart. Notice that lines up very closely with the top of value on the daily chart. So 47.13 for S&P futures. Very important there, and level to watch. NASDAQ, I think it's one step at a time. This was right at the 50-day moving average and started and was below value for most of the day. So we're going to need to see this thing get above 16,420. I'm not going to go, too far into the weeds about IWM. It's nice that it kind of held this level, but I wouldn't be surprised if this thing broke. And I wouldn't be surprised if it bounced back in here into the middle of the range. So I just think that there's better trades and better places than to try to figure out a sideways chart. So I'll move on from there, but I just wanted to go over it quickly. So I mentioned the semiconductors. Let me go over a couple of those. And I like to go over, mention trades that I've done, both good trades and bad trades, and how I manage them. But I thought that this had come in enough for me to take a shot. Marvell had awesome earnings about a week ago, and I wanted to have a couple things on. I didn't want to go into today certainly over positioned. I talked about where the S&P was this morning, and I thought it was kind of a coin flip. So to me, that's not a lot of edge. But generally, what I like to do is position in names that I think are the strongest names, right? So this was XLV. Uber was a short position. Marvell. So we'll give this a shot. And we'll look to take half off at 87.40. I took a target in this thing. I think I forgot about taking the half off at 87.40. It wasn't even close to there earlier in the day. So this thing closed at 88. I think I even may have put the wrong price target in here. Yeah, I paid 83. Sometimes I make mistakes, especially when you have a busy day. All right, so that's that. I hit another target in SPLV. And then, things that kind of caught my eye, we try to observe as many things as possible. Before I get into this group, let me talk about where we did see a lot of option activity today. Once again, it was Apple, just to give you a sense, because I know people love option activity. But I would watch this 177.21 in Apple, right? We had to get through there, so we kind of came from right in the middle of value for the day, and we managed to get above it. But just a ton of Apple calls on the tape, and buying, which is what I pay attention to. Also, Nvidia had a lot of buy the dip calls. People really like when Nvidia sells off a little bit. This touched the 50-day moving average and is back inside value. As nice as this is, I still think that there's a few better looking charts out there than Nvidia, but I do think that it still remains kind of the best in breed in the group. But I think there's names like the Marvell, like this PI also has been very strong. I'm also watching Cadence. This is one I actually had on the weekend watch list, but still may need a little bit more time. Watching for a break above 186.20. All right, let me get into a a couple other ones. This Arista Networks, I've been watching this thing. I have had no position in this thing until today, and sometimes I give option activity a hard time. This one I just thought was a pretty good signal. It had just started to break value, and we saw a lot of, I think it was the Januaries. I traded what they did, what I saw on the tape, which was the the January 140 calls, right? And then what I did was I took profits on the calls, right? Happy to get $6 for these, paid 420. Very nice gain in like an hour, and then moved into a stock position for this one. I like to do that. After I've made a good amount of chunk of money with the options, because the options are going to be more volatile, right? And I just feel like I could do a lot more things. I have a lot more flexibility with the stock, but that's me. Everybody's different, right? So besides this name in the group, I also thought FTNT, which I started a position here too. It's a little bit preemptive. It's still got to get through that downtrend line, and possibly get through value too. But I just like the turnaround in this thing, and it's back above the 50-day moving average. So my stop will be right here, 328. Remember in yesterday's video, I talked about setups, right? What I look for in setups is, I look for relative strength. I look for a change in the personality of the name, it breaking a downtrend line or breaking above the value area that I use the market webs indicator for, right? And then having a level to trade against, right? So that exactly where the trade's not going to work, right? I know everybody has had some losers over the last couple weeks, right? It's how you manage these losers, right? Is really kind of how you can kind of snap back quickly when the market responds to what you want to see, right? So that's a couple names. Also, one that came up on one of my scanners here at the end of the day is this A10 Networks, right? Which I think is a cyber name. It's in the cyber ETF. But I like how it was basically pretty strong here the last week. Sorry, not strong, but stronger than some of its peers within its group. Right? I always want to look for the names that are holding up better. Right? And this thing, it's new 50-day moving average for this name, and got back into value. So if you wanted to trade this name, 1555 would be the level to trade against. Or if you want a little bit more tolerance, use the 50-day moving average, right? Keep it as simple as possible, in my opinion. All right, we went through some of the semiconductors. We went through also one other semiconductor that I've stayed long because I never got stopped out on it, which is pretty good, in my opinion, to not get stopped out when the tape is pretty difficult. But I'm still on this microchip too, MCHP. All right, so I think that's it for today's video. We covered enough names. You're going to see tonight, you're going to see a lot of people post charts, right? It's funny how this market can change. And again, I'm not saying that we're completely out of the woods. I think you still have to trade disciplined and be a very good risk manager. Very good risk manager. Let me say that again because I messed that up. But the more that you could do that, right? That's how you kind of separate yourself from the group, right? Is being a good risk manager rather than just making predictions. Anybody can make predictions, right? And sound confident. There's a bunch of that on Twitter, right? But what's going to separate your performance from other people is to be objective and to kind of take this market for what it is. And it changes from time to time. You're going to see, we've seen the semiconductors lead. We've seen home improvement, home builders lead the market for a little while. We've seen big tech, really kind of get some legs to it for about a week or so, right? So it changes around, and the more flexible that you could be with this market, I think the better situation. And of course, my situation is I'm always looking for the relative strength, right? So that's it for today's video. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.